The Belle Époque in Paris bore witness to the birth of the demi-monde, literally the half-world, a world of people who lived apart from the conventions of society. They belonged neither in the ranks of the truly destitute nor among the wealthy. They led lives which were consecrated to pleasure, sometimes of a sexual nature, but more often merely concerning the pursuit of happiness through any means available. It was into this underworld of gritty culture that Henri de Toulouse Lautrec emerged in 1881, primed with rejection from his own aristocratic class and ready to be welcomed into the ranks of misfits. Cut off from the world of his birth, Toulouse-Lautrec's physical deformity enhanced his isolation. Childhood accidents resulting in the separate fracture of each of his legs stunted his growth and kept him from reaching average adult height. This, coupled with the prominent lisp caused by less noticeable craniofacial deformities, which stemmed from his inbred lineage, rendered him an infirm outcast who was looked down upon by his social equals. His later descent into alcoholism thus seemed understandable, inevitable even. Though he was often able to work through his inebriation, it became his eventual downfall. As the eldest son of a prominent noble family, Lautrec was born to inherit his father's title. His mother and father were first cousins, wed to consolidate a weakening family line. Due to this inbreeding, Toulouse-Lautrec suffered from genetic mutations which caused him to break each of his legs separately before he was 14. The bones would never heal properly, and his legs would remain stunted while the rest of his body grew at a normal rate. Following his move to Montmartre in 1881, a clear shift becomes readily apparent in Toulouse-Lautrec's work. In spite of his affinity for the demi-monde, Lautrec remained an outsider even though he took up their voice. Many of his works explore the idea of this isolation within a crowd. Despite the masses thronged around them, the patrons of the dance halls that he paints are often disassociated and bear vacant expressions, evidently manifesting his own solitude. Despite this cloud of torment, Toulouse-Lautrec was a prolific artist who produced countless works meditating on the state of the demi-monde. One such work, his 1887 At the Bar, perfectly captures the roiling spirit of the underworld of Paris. In that work, a group of 4 people at a bar counter, presumably in the Moulin de Galette, where Toulouse-Lautrec spent most of his time painting and socializing during that period of his life, gather amidst a backdrop of grays, blues, and soft browns. The colors all fade into each other, except for the vibrant orange of the barmaid's hair and the glowing green of the absinthe bottles on the counter behind her. Detached from the group at the bar is the figure of a small man in a brown overcoat and bowler hat, presumably Toulouse-Lautrec himself. He drinks from a glass, one foot perched on a lower edge against the bar. From behind the barmaid are glowing green bottles of absinthe, presumably her patron's drink of choice. Unlike many of his other works with similar subjects, this one fails to harness the dynamic power of strong diagonal lines to draw the viewer's attention and create movement and tension in the painting. In contrast to nearly all of his other works, At the Bar almost entirely forgoes the use of line. Rather, he transitions his forms with colors to create shapes which stand out against the gloomy background. The reason for this uncharacteristically still moment seems to stem from the melancholic emotion expressed in the painting. The creation of this work in 1887 comes on the tails of his contraction of syphilis from a prostitute at the end of a turbulent love affair with the only woman he ever loved romantically. It is possible that she is the blurry-faced woman behind the bar, as she often sat for his paintings. Even if she is not, that girl's vacant expression might be a substitute for the mistress that Lautrec felt slipping away from him. This turbulence was accentuated by his increasing reliance on alcohol as his disease and relationship worsened. From this fact, we can infer that Toulouse-Lautrec's selection of this scene was not accidental. He captures 3 people in the process of consuming absinthe and one serving it, ultimately supporting their vice. Toulouse-Lautrec's depiction of the drink was not uncommon. This was a theme seen throughout Impressionist painting. It is a means on his part of suggesting that utilitarianism is perhaps ideal, but not the way life actually is. His other works surrounding drinking, of which there are many, often present the possibility of a prostitute's suffering, a reality which many upper-class Parisians felt very uncomfortable with. This element of isolation is further emphasized by the physical isolation of his foreman at the bar. Self-portraits were not a new theme for Toulouse Lautrec. He painted several throughout his career, as both serious portrait and caricature. By this point, Toulouse-Lautrec had clearly become conscious of his role as a demi-monde of the demi-monde. In the context of his other self-portraits, At the Bar is somber and pessimistic. It forgoes emphasis on his deformity, and though he never publicly pronounced his political views, Toulouse-Lautrec was a major actor in the Bohemian culture which was focused on the ideals of freedom and liberty. In a time when a picture had as much power as a bomb, his unabashed depiction of the underworld of Montmartre and its inhabitants suggests that he believed in an overarching equality which is at the core of anarchism. At its heart, the groggy haze that pervades over At the Bar is a metaphor for the haze of isolation which Toulouse-Lautrec experienced as a result of his infirmity and his inebriation. This painting is dependent upon a merging of opposites, a blend of realism and abstraction to display verisimilitude in subject matter. The demi-monde which Toulouse-Lautrec captured was ultimately one which he inherently embraced for its strangeness and also threw off for its lowliness. Ultimately, this painting is the product of a man who saw himself as the constant outsider among outsiders and represents the spirit of the dissociated world of the demi-monde.